Welcome to qnawire.
All right, question 5 in our book says that you drive 100 kilometers east, do some sightseeing, and then turn around and drive 50 kilometers west, where you stop for lunch. A. Represent your trip with the displacement vector. Choose an object of reference and coordinate axis so that the scalar component of the vector is B, positive, C, negative, and D, 0. Okay, so before we do each of those scenarios, let's actually draw up our what's actually happening when we're driving. So if let's just say we start at this origin here. This is our axis, I'll call X position. So it starts off saying that we drive, I'll do this in red here. We drive 100 kilometers east. Let's say here is 100 kilometers, 100 km. Where we turn around and drive west 50 kilometers. So I'll do this in green. So I'll do my best to make it about halfway, maybe something like this. We stop our car here, and this is 50 kilometers away from our origin. So this is the scenario that we're dealing with. It asks to choose your object of reference and coordinate axis so that the scalar component of this vector is positive. So first we look at our net displacement. We know that, well, for starting at the origin, in situation 1, so maybe I'll do this in red. Situation 1, our displacement is from 100 kilometers as our final spot to our initial spot is 0 kilometers. That's 100 kilometers traveled. And then displacement x for part 2, I'll do in green again, where we're going from a final spot to 50 kilometers, while we started at position 100 kilometers from our axis. So that part is a net displacement of 50 kilometers, negative 50 kilometers, right? Because we're going from more positive to a less positive region. So if we want, part B asks if we want our net scalar component to be positive. If we choose an object of reference for each scenario and coordinate axis, so the scalar component, is positive. So in this scenario for part B, we'll say if our reference, we'll just say is the road equals, let's just erase this. So our reference location, reference object can just be the road. So the difference between the traveling spots at the origin. So our scalar component here would be positive if we say positive x is to the right hand side, or that's east is to the right. If we want this final result to be negative, again, our reference can be the road as well. So now this time, well, for part B was a bit more obvious. If we have left to be positive in our x direction, then we have our two displacements to be 50 minus 100. Sorry, negative 50 plus, no, sorry. Yeah, that's right. 100 minus 50, so a positive x direction has to be in the westerly direction. So just to make that obvious, if this was positive, then displacement 1 would be negative 100 kilometers. And displacement 2, in this scenario, would be positive 50 kilometers. So our net displacement total for the trip is negative 50 kilometers. Where if we did the same scenario for part B, we would get a positive value. Final. And finally, part D is if we want 0 net displacement. Well, this is a little difference. Well, our reference here has to be the car itself, because if you're in the car, then your net displacement is 0, and neither direction matters. So then delta x here for the final scenario, so the total trip, would have to be 0 because the car itself, as a reference, did not move with respect to itself, of course.